There's been a murder in Animal Land, and it's our job to solve it. But before we're through, we'll uncover an estranged wife, 2 secret relationships, multiple plot twists, and animal rights? All this and more coming up in Enix's 1987 thriller, Animal Land Satsujin Jiken, or Animal Land Murder Mystery. Hi, I'm Mr. Jakes, and this time I'm playing a game on the MSX. The weird thing about this particular model MSX2 is that it's also a word processor. You can use the built-in word processing software to compose your document, and then you would print it out. But unfortunately, the printer doesn't seem to work anymore on this one. Oh well, I only bought it for playing MSX games anyway. I just happened to find this particular model available for a steal, and I had to pick it up. I'm not planning on doing a lot of MSX videos in the future, but it's going to be put to good use, since it seems that just about every f***ing PC-88 game has an MSX port. Up until now, I've been getting my brother Neo-Alec to capture footage on this MSX he has at his place, but I wanted to ease his workload a bit. So anyway, today's game is actually a title exclusive to the MSX1, released in 1987. Back in the days when Enix were known for their graphic adventure games on Japanese PCs, including other mystery games like Portopia Renzoku Satsujin Jiken and Karuizawa Yukai Annai. Animal Land Satsujin Jiken was released a bit later and could be thought of as sort of a parody of earlier mystery games, this time using anthropomorphic animals as the characters. So while this game at first glance looks like it might be for kids, the theme alone might clue you in that we're actually going to be addressing some pretty adult issues here. Maybe that's why they never ported this one to the Famicom. But anyway, without further ado, let's dig in. This one has become a bit of a rare collector's item in recent years, so don't go looking for one unless you have deep pockets. The Enix seal on the side here is just kinda hanging there on my copy. I'm just gonna leave it like that. On the back, instead of those photos of the developers they put on other Enix games from the same time, here we get animal depictions of them. In the manual, first there's this cute little map of Animal Land. It isn't a big place. And then a manga depicting the same events we'll see in the opening of the game in a second. Then some short instructions for how to play, a map of the overhead view section near the end of the game, a list of major characters, some tips, and finally a page about the staff that has 3 hint coupons. You're supposed to mail these along with your questions to Enix on how to progress the game. The game itself is contained on an MSX1 ROM cartridge, so let's put it in and press the power button. Hey, quiet, you silly old printer! So first of all, we're informed in English that this is grave message for MSX users by Enix. Oh no, what does Enix have to tell us? One day, a murder took place in a small quiet mountain village of animals. The victim was a fox named Gonkichi, the owner of a jewelry store. He was found sitting in a chair with a gunshot through his heart. The first to find the body was his 18-year-old son, Kokon, who arrived at the jewelry store the morning after the murder apparently took place. The door was unlocked, so just about anybody could be the culprit. Then it's the title screen. Love those fonts. This is going to be a violent game about animals, okay kids? You'll notice you can continue a previous game. The passwords are called case files, and you'll get one at the end of each of the 7 chapters of the game. Let's start from the beginning. The star of the game is a bloodhound named Oidon, but rather than taking direct control of him, we'll play the role of his faceless older partner who guides him. A similar idea was used in Enix's 1983 game, Portopia Renzoku Satsujin Jiken, where you play the unseen boss of the young detective on screen. Though that game plays a lot differently, using text commands. Animal Land uses the number keys.
Which was the style at the time?
Enix's adventure game Jesus, released the same year, also used the number keys. Here we can look, take, investigate, ask, open, show, smell, or go somewhere else. The commands available change depending on the current screen. The smell command was obviously added because Oidon is a dog, and it's often emphasized what a good sense of smell he has. And thus it's kind of surprising that this smell command only plays a key role at maybe a couple points in the game. So first of all, actually we find the murder weapon just laying on the floor. Can they test the gun for paw prints? Nah, I guess they don't do that in Animal Land. They also find a single golden hair, and a small piece of torn stationery with the katakana character "new" written on it. What could it mean? Anyway, at the storefront, they find all the jewelry has been stolen, and in the study they find a locked safe as well as a locked desk drawer. Once we've found all possible clues, we can return to the station. I love how the police station in Animal Land is just a stump with a wooden sign over it that says "Police." Here we review what we know so far. The victim was the 38-year-old owner of a jewelry store who has 2 sons with his wife who divorced him and took off somewhere 3 years ago. Before moving on to Chapter 2, we're given our first password. The passwords in the game are all zoo animal names, and the first one is Armadillo. The passwords for each chapter are always the same, so you don't have to worry about missing an item or something from earlier in the game. If you've made it to the next chapter, then you've found everything. So in Chapter 2, we begin by investigating the convenience store across the street from Gonkichi's jewelry store. The store clerk here is Kokon's girlfriend, Pyonko.
Well, hello, you wascally wabbit.
Apparently their relationship is on the rocks though, since she gets angry at the mere mention of his name. Since the convenience store is so close by to the scene of the crime, we learn that she saw Gonkichi's eldest son, Konta, enter the jewelry store at about 8:30, and then a white car pulled up at about 11, after which she heard 2 loud noises. Anyway, that's enough about the crime. I love how it just lets you use the open command on onigiri and norimaki sitting on the store shelves. Also, the usual naughty staple from all these games from the time is here. Whenever you choose to investigate any of the female characters, they always scream and say, "What the hell are you doing?" It seems to me that there's gotta be a way to investigate someone without groping them. Anyway, next we go to Konta's room. Konta is the eldest son of Gonkichi, who we haven't met yet. There we do find a schedule book that says 8:30 on the 10th. Which lines up with when he was seen entering the jewelry store. For the rest of this chapter, we'll be calling people in for questioning. Most of the game is spent here doing that, really. But in this chapter, we can only call the victim's 2 sons, Konta and Kokon. We hear their alibis. Konta was with a friend, and Kokon was at home watching TV alone, which means there isn't anyone who can vouch for him. They both drive white cars, neither of them knows the combination for their dad's safe, and Kokon lost the key to the store. Kokon also appears to be injured, and he says he just fell down somewhere. In Chapter 3, we're able to call in some new characters. Peru is a 22-year-old employee of the jewelry store, who says she was on a date at the time of the incident. We learn that she was the one who gave Gonkichi the gun, because he said he was haunted by a golden-haired ghost. Yeah, just shoot the ghost with a gun. Great idea. Oidon uses his nose to notice that Kokon smells like Peru's perfume, and Kokon admits that he lied about his alibi earlier. Actually, he was on a date with Peru, and when Pyonko found out about it, she hit him, and that's why he has that injury on his face. In this chapter, we also meet Rinrin, a 23-year-old bank worker and work acquaintance of Gonkichi's. At the time of the incident, she says she was at his son Konta's house discussing business related to the jewelry store. So this confirms Konta's alibi. She got her ouchie by spilling coffee and burning herself, she says. Then there's Tarj, 38, an old friend of Gonkichi's. He says he was at the jewelry store around 6 or 7 and was therefore one of the last known people to see him alive. He says there was a bit of a brotherly conflict going on between Konta and Kokon, since Kokon didn't want to carry on his father's business like Konta did. He tells us we should visit Gonkichi's favorite coffee shop, where he was a regular. There we learn that Gonkichi's hobby was fish hunting. Fish hunting? Don't you mean fishing? But I guess when you think about it, we can't have anthropomorphic animals hunting other animals. So what can they hunt? Fish. Anyway, Gonkichi mysteriously quit fish hunting about 3 years ago, but nobody knows why. So with the investigation going nowhere, Oidon decides to get advice from a retired genius detective who hangs out at this bar, the brilliantly named Koala. And all he has to tell us today is that he has a feeling there's more to this case than meets the eye. And so our heroes return to the drawing board and decide to focus next on that piece of torn stationery that says "new" on it. It's gotta be important, right? And with some more pressing, Kokon remembers that there's a tanuki living in his father's apartment building named Nuki, who had fallen on hard financial times and had been feuding with his father over unpaid rent. Maybe the "new" is for Nuki. That would make sense. Nuki says he was at home alone at the time of the incident, so there's no one to vouch for him. And without a warrant, we go ahead and search his place. There we find a receipt for a rental car rented during the time of the murder, and upon calling the company on the receipt, we learn that indeed it was a white car. During this time, though, we can also go back to Koala, who says he thinks someone is using Nuki as a scapegoat. How he knows all this stuff is kind of a mystery. Genius detective? What a convenient plot device. Then, I knew from following this walkthrough that I was supposed to search under the tatami mats at Nuki's place next, but I couldn't figure out the flag you need to trigger before it lets you search under the tatami. Turned out it was something stupid. For some reason you have to go and ask Nuki if he owns a car again, and he says he already told us he doesn't. If he had money to buy a car, he wouldn't be living in such a crappy apartment with old tatami mats. And that was the trigger. We go to his place, lift up the mats, and find the key to the jewelry store, as well as all the stolen jewels, except for one, which seems to be missing. So it's an open and shut case. In this chapter, you have the arrest command, and with this much evidence, we can now place Nuki under arrest. But not so fast. With the prospect of being convicted for murder, Nuki gives his real alibi. He couldn't have killed Gonkichi because at the time of the murder, he had instead hit an elephant with the rental car. And upon calling the traffic division, we confirmed that there was indeed a hit-and-run incident where an elephant was left unconscious on the road, and the rent-a-car company confirms that the car was returned with a bunch of big dents in it. And so instead of murder, we end up arresting Nuki for the hit-and-run instead. After that day of hard work, our heroes hit the bar, where Koala says, "I know the real culprit, it was you guys." Oh no, Koala is drunk again. But keep in mind that he's a genius detective and therefore is always right. So in the next chapter, our heroes decide to seek out Gonkichi's estranged wife, who divorced him 3 years ago. Neither of her sons know where she is, but now Konta conveniently has figured out the combination for his dad's safe, though he says he went through a lot of trouble to get it. In the safe is the key to the desk drawer, and in that we find an unsent letter from Gonkichi addressed to his wife. In the letter, he apologizes for whatever he did 3 years ago, and begs her to come back. But more importantly, now we have his wife's address. At his wife Tsuneko's apartment, the first thing that catches our eye is her impressive collection of taxidermied animals, which are fish. Oh, fish hunting. I get it. At first, Tsuneko keeps her mouth shut and refuses to tell us anything. I don't know what I did to finally get her to talk, but we eventually learn that the stuffed fish were her husband's prized possessions, and for some reason he gave them all to her when they divorced and he quit fish hunting. Upon pressing her more, she tells us the reason why they divorced. 3 years ago, her husband came home from fish hunting, muttering something about, "I can't believe I finally went and did it. That poor gold-colored something or other." After that, he was a changed man, and he told her that he wasn't fit to be her husband. Koala tells us that Gonkichi's fish hunting spot was a place near town called the Lost Woods, which used to be a popular hunting mecca, but now nobody goes there anymore. And so begins what's got to be the most infamous section of the game, the Lost Woods. Now, the good news is that there are no battles, and you can move really quickly. In fact, you can even use a controller for this part of the game if you plug one in. But this maze and the stuff you have to find is nothing short of diabolical. First, look at the size of this thing, and that's only half of it in the manual. Here's the whole thing. Can you spot the hidden 3-letter message? And trust me, you cannot imagine how hard this thing is to navigate until you actually try it. There are so many sections that look like they must be connected, but aren't. This map is a lifesaver, but even with it, this took me a while. It must have really sucked without one. And keep in mind, you can't save your progress partway through. There's only the password that brings you back to the beginning of the stage. Anyway, there are 20 different things you need to find, and thankfully they're numbered here in the order you're going to want to collect them. There are also still a few inhabitants of the forest you can talk to, including this fish. Wait, you mean the fish in this world can talk, and yet you still hunt them with rifles? And in fact, one of the items you can find in the forest is Gonkichi's underwater rifle. We also find a couple of 3.5-year-old newspaper and magazine clippings about a murder that occurred in these woods, but they're old and only partially legible. One useless secret in this game is that you can throw a dirty ball you found in the woods earlier into the lake, and then a fairy comes out to ask if you threw away this dirty ball or this clean one. This is based on Aesop's fable, The Honest Woodcutter, which is for some reason super well known in Japan. It's been parodied in everything.
お前が落としたのは金のサランラップか銀のサランラップか
If you answer honestly, you get to keep both the dirty and clean balls, but it doesn't actually do anything. A more pressing issue is how to get across to the island. This stumped me, and the answer isn't actually given in the walkthrough. What you have to do is press 7 to use the Go Somewhere command, and choose Go to the Lake. Oidon will then simply swim across and obtain some kerosene on the island. We can use that kerosene along with some matches we also found to burn through these bushes. On the other side, there's a shed where we find some gold-colored hair dye. Now all that remains is the final chapter, where everything will be revealed. So skip ahead if you don't want to know the twists. So in the final chapter, we bring everyone back in for questioning. And the first thing we learn here, ironically, has nothing to do with all that evidence we just found in the Lost Woods. Oidon notices that Pyonko is wearing a new ring, which she says she got from Kokon. Turns out this was the one piece of jewelry that was missing when we found the rest at Nuki's place. It's actually Rinnin's ring that she had brought to the jewelry store to be repaired. And so now Kokon admits to stealing the jewelry, giving the ring to Pyonko to apologize for his infidelity, and using the rest to try and frame Nuki. But he insists he didn't kill his father. He found him already dead and took the opportunity to steal the jewelry and blame it on the murderer. He wanted money to start his own business. Since his alibi from earlier checks out, he gets arrested here, but only for theft. So next, Peru recognizes the photo from the magazine we found in the woods. It's the panda, Runnun, who was well known for his unique gold-colored fur. But unfortunately, he was killed. Oidon didn't know about that case since he's new on the force, it's explained. Next, Konta suddenly comes to turn himself in. He says he's the one who killed his father. He had been at the jewelry store that night discussing business with him when they got into a fight that got physical. Fearing for his life, Gonkichi grabbed his gun and fired a warning shot. Then Konta wrestled with his father over the gun and it somehow discharged and shot Gonkichi in the heart. He asked Rinnin to lie and say she was with him at the time of the murder in order to make his alibi. But he says to please not blame Rinnin. He tells us that we can find the bullet from the murder lodged in the wall at the scene of the crime. So now Konta is also arrested. But that isn't it. We can continue questioning. Tsuneko says that Konta couldn't have done it, and that she believes he's covering for someone else, who she suspects must be his new girlfriend he's mentioned. She doesn't know who she is, though. Upon investigating the wall in the jewelry shop, they find that indeed the bullet is lodged in the wall, but when the blood on the bullet is tested, it's found to be someone else's, not Gonkichi's. Next, for some reason now Oidon notices that Rinnin's ring that was stolen has a hidden compartment that can be opened, and inside is a photo of Rinnin with a golden panda who looks just like her. This must be Runnun, he concludes. Rinnin and Runnun were twins, And just then, the results of Gonkichi's autopsy come in, and it's announced that the rest of the stationery that had the katakana "nu" on it was found in Gonkichi's stomach. When all the pieces are put together, it reads, "Twin pandas are coming to kill me." So the "nu" wasn't actually the katakana character "nu", it was the left half of the first kanji in the word twin. So just when they're about to arrest Rinnin as well, they discover that they can't, because, well, she decided to go take a trip to that forest I mentioned in my last video, where, transgressors against the self are sent. She left a note though that says she's responsible for everything. Konta and everyone else didn't do anything. Oidon surmises that Rinnin must have been Konta's secret lover. So now Konta has to finally tell the whole truth. When Runnun was killed 3.5 years ago, Rinnin suspected Gonkichi from the beginning. The murder weapon was an underwater rifle, which Gonkichi was known to be adept with, and she knew that he was jealous of Runnun's popularity. Unfortunately, she was never able to prove Gonkichi's guilt, and the murder went unsolved. Then about a year ago, Konta and Rinnin met. They saw each other regularly at that secret shed in the woods, and according to Konta, they really were in love. Eventually, Rinnin opened up about how she suspected Konta's father and had sworn revenge, but Konta convinced her not to kill his father. "But your father was killed," interrupts Oidon. "Yes, and it's all my fault," says Konta. Konta couldn't believe his father really was the killer, and so he and Rinnin decided to test him. They brought the ring with the photo in it into his shop to be repaired, knowing that he would find the photo, and they also dyed Rinnin's fur gold to see his reaction. Instead, he got scared and thought that Rinnin was coming to kill him. So next, Konta and Rinnin decided to confront Gonkichi in person, and right away he got his gun and shot Rinnin in the arm. Konta yelled, "Dad, we're here to get you to turn yourself in." But Gonkichi wouldn't believe them and continued to aim his gun at Rinnin. Konta jumped his father, there was a loud bang, and next thing he knew, his father was lying dead on the floor. Not knowing what to do, he took Rinnin and ran. They planned to turn themselves in, but next the crime turned into a theft as well, thanks to his brother, and he became too scared of what would happen if he admitted to the murder. So he and Rinnin agreed to lie about the crime together. But then Oidon tells Konta about the stationery found in his father's stomach. "Was he really dead?" asks Oidon. "You said you left him on the floor. He was found the next morning in his chair." Gonkichi must have known that Rinnin would be suspected if the stationery was found, and so he tried to hide it. Saving Rinnin from jail was his final act of atonement before he died. And so Konta breaks down and cries for his father and poor Rinnin. But then they are interrupted by Koala, leading an angry mob. He says that neither Gonkichi nor Rinnin are to blame. The real culprit is Animal Land itself. "You know that this world is surrounded by a giant cage, right?" he says, "and that the humans come to look at us for their amusement. The popularity of the animals is decided by the humans, and when exciting new animals like golden pandas arrive, nobody is interested in looking at foxes anymore. That's why Gonkichi got jealous and killed Runnun. If the humans would just leave them in nature, then they could live in peace." The animals all begin chanting, "This isn't a peaceful village at all. Bring us back to nature." Then my favorite part, a tour bus passes by, and a little girl asks, "Mommy, what are those animals all yelling about?" And the mom says, "I don't know, honey. Maybe they're all singing a happy song together." The bus slowly passes by. Meanwhile, the animals are still chanting, "Bring us back to nature." Staff roll. Koala's earlier declaration that the real culprit is us was the hint to the final twist, and I took it to mean that the faceless protagonist we're playing as is actually a human, and Oidon works for the humans. Cause when you think about it, Oidon is man's best friend. He isn't a zoo animal like the rest of the characters. Except I thought Peru was supposed to be a cat. What the hell is Peru supposed to be anyway? I'll bet she isn't even from Peru. And so that's it. The game was never ported to any other systems, so we'll just go right into the wrap-up here. Animal Land Satsujin Jiken is a funny game that exists. Enix released it in 1987 for the MSX1. While I was kind of bored with the game toward the beginning, by about the third or fourth chapter I began to be kind of amused by the cast of characters and genuinely curious who the real culprit was. The overhead view chapter was a nice touch, but has the potential to be pretty frustrating without a walkthrough. Even with one, it took quite a while. Also, maybe a little too much happens all at once afterward in the final chapter. But anyway, hope you found this to be a little fun and amusing. I'm Mr. Jakes, and here's a list of the patrons who helped to make my videos possible. This particular video was requested by my patron, Tangent. And like I said earlier, I don't want to make a lot of MSX videos in the future, but I agreed to do this one quite a while ago and just now got around to making it. I hope to be focusing mostly on the PC-98 and PC-88 now. Thanks for watching. I'll be back in paradise next time.